Okay, welcome back. So this is your transitioning. We have today's class is the 11th and then one more next week. So we're almost there, guys. Thank you for finishing, completing. I know, life gets in the way, other plans come up. Things get a bit boring or dull or whatever the reason is, though. So thank you for finishing what you started. Uh, so since time is now we can see the end. If there are pressing questions about your project, about the Crucible, about what you've done, um, now's the time to ask. See if there's a good orienting question that may be relevant to other people, what the hell it is that we're doing. What are we fucking doing in this godforsaken class together? If that's still not clear, a little louder, yeah. What the fuck are we doing? It's been 12 weeks of multiple maps, and we started with the Joseph Campbell and the astrology of where we are, and trying to develop a coherent narrative of us coming through the collective dark night into a new epoch, which I think is a compelling narrative. I think it's a wonderful frame for what we're trying to do, that we may never see the results, the full results of our virtue, but that shouldn't stop us nevertheless, that we're on the frontier. You see, that's like the early settlers in the United States migrating west into the unknown. They had no idea what kind of world they would find, and they had no idea what kind of world they would build for future generations. And that's where we are. The pandemic portal opened up a threshold into a new civilization that we won't necessarily see. We're the early settlers or the early adopters or the early frontiers people. And so we have to get our priorities straight, and we have to really practice the Bhagavad Gita when it tells us to put forth the right energy independent of the result. Somehow knowing deep in our being that that result lays, that's like putting, like old masons putting megalithic blocks into a cathedral they won't see the end of, but then that cathedral stands for 1,000 years. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen with the Ratcha Nunnery Stupa. Although in this case, maybe that stupa will be completed, but its impact, its import will be felt as a vibration for future generations long after we're gone. So I think that heroic narrative, hopefully that as a collective narrative, you've also found one that's personal, that makes sense of whatever your transition is. Because I think if you're in the crucible, it's because you acknowledge that you went through a personal transition, not necessarily a completion of your transformation, but you entered a threshold, or you entered a dark night, or you were already on your way of giving something up, or you've already left home, or you've already found the mentor, or you're somewhere in between, or you're in the ordeal, or you've just come out of the ordeal and you've seen that it wasn't just for you, but that you found some new strength that you want to share with others, wherever you are in the map. And then we went into Jung. There may be still many questions of Jung. Jung is so vast. His writings are so voluminous. There's something about the process of self-actualization, of individuation, of becoming through trial and through receptivity to the collective, And through following the signs of the archetypal synchronicity, prophecy, prayer, symbol, that you re-find your way to the soul, more of who you are meant to be. You specifically, like an acorn becoming a walnut tree, or there is at your heart a diamond of what you are meant to do in this lifetime. And everything that you've encountered, particularly the trial, are there not to destroy you, but there to reinvent you. Oh, that's a powerful takeaway. Whatever victim narrative we're holding on to when we say we hit our head in the dark night of the labyrinth and we say, why is this happening to me? Hopefully, we can remember, if we have trust in the soul, that it puts bigger challenges in front of us specifically because it knows and understands we are ready. We are ready to ascend. We are ready to expand. We are ready to integrate. And then here we are in the tantras now, and we can't do the tantras any service in 4 sessions, impossible, but hopefully just through a little guided visualization, there's just a little taste of the beauty of reimagining your world and reimagining who you are and reimagining your purpose in it and being audacious. Truly, audacious is a good word. Bold with your moonshot, with what you think you can contribute. So I'm going to ask again if there's no anybody there that has anybody here, there, or anywhere. And if you're joining us from Europe on the video, you can send in an email or a comment.
I have a question, Miles.
Yeah.
Within this Crucible journey, it's been so supportive, the structure, and especially in moments where I'm like, have I lost my mind? And
You
finding
indeed have lost your mind.
yeah, multiple times.
There's no shame in that. Look at everybody on the screen. We've all lost our mind, and that's okay. We've all freaked out, and I just want to say there's no shame in that. Hopefully now
Um,
that's clear.
well, yes. Well, I was in well with the structure and the support, I felt very safe in it. But there was one point where I felt like, am I actually doing somehow irreparable damage? Got so because normally, like, I think I would have stopped, but with the class, I'm like, okay, I can go deeper into this. And then there was a point where I was actually, am I just being a masochist at this point? And then, um, yeah. And so I guess I think within that question is like, is there, I don't know. I guess it's just a personal question. Maybe there's not an answer. I guess my question is, how deep into this like soul testing can you go? And I don't know. At some point, I backed off on what was that pressure. Um, I don't know. I think there's a question here, but I don't. I'm a little wondering. It's about something.
The, the question I heard is how deep you can go. You can get so deep that you can get lost. And I guess that's the point. I mean, if you look at the biography of Jung, how deep did he go? He went so deep, he was unrecognizable to himself. He went so deep, he wasn't sure he could get back. He went so deep, he lost absolutely everything, or he was willing to wager everything. I mean, if you've never had a mentor, maybe you don't appreciate the sacrifice, the moment that Jung realized Freud's words of I can't risk my authority, and the umbilical cord was snapped. If for Jung, who didn't have the prospect of reliable parents to look up to, was bereft of the good enough parents, to finally have found someone of Freud's command, authority, aptitude, who looked back at him as if he was the golden child, the heir apparent. Just how affirming that would have been. It's like if you can appreciate Jung's biography, and if you can identify slightly with it, well, maybe some of us didn't have the kind of parenting we wish we could have had, and how that let us down and not only disappointed us, but it didn't set us up for necessarily an easy life. And like a hungry ghost, we were searching for that mooring, that safe harbor. And then to have finally found it in Freud, and to have that mirroring so that you can make the next step in your evolution to feel good enough, because it can only come one way, which is in the mirror reflection of our peers and the ones we admire, especially, right? Because any sense of good enough can't just innately pop out of nowhere, out of the abyss. It comes by way of reflection. So he finally found a mirror suitable to lift him out of his incompetence and his alienation. And then fairly quickly, in the timeline, it's relative, but fairly quickly, having to lose it, having to give it up, having to walk away, to have the strength to walk away from the very thing that gave you life. It's just, there's something in your question about how deep do we go? I mean, who is willing to cut their own umbilical cord? Who is willing, if you're a diver, to cut the oxygen that keeps you alive, that sustains you, but also keeps you ensnared or trapped? Who's willing to go into the unknown abyss, where you wager or you risk near death, to become so disoriented? I mean, this is what I think the initiatory process of psychedelics may mimic. Yeah, because certainly some of the more potent psychedelics they have a reputation of being quite fierce. In other words, you can take a strong dose of the medicine in a series of ceremony and utterly lose your mind and be assailed by all kinds of things that you didn't sign up for. You thought you were going to have a walk in the park and that you were going to have a conversation with God. But before you had your conversation with God, you had to go into the bowels of hell. And in the midst of going to the bowels of hell, you weren't sure you were ever going to get out. And it's only having survived that you realize what importance it was. So I guess the way that I'm hearing the question is like how deep you can go. I mean, part of us, like, don't be ashamed that there's fear. Like, I have a lot of fear about actual death, actually dying. Well, I mean, I don't have much shame about it. I'm happy to talk about it openly. So there's part of me that's holding on, that's grasping, clinging, because I'm afraid to fully let go. That's the big D death, but think about that on a more microscopic scale. That's what we do when we're afraid. Whether it be to a relationship that's no longer serving us or a job role that gives the security and the pension and the health benefits, but it's not truly aligned, whether it's being remaining in your neighborhood or in your city or country because that's what you're familiar and that's what your parents did and that's what your ancestors did, whether it be just holding on to a mindset like because that was part of the apparatus of your self-protection and self-preservation, and without it who would you be, what might happen to you. I think, yes, I think it's easy to talk about letting go and it's much harder to really do it. So when I hear you admit that you go up to a precipice or point and then retract, I think if everybody's honest, everybody could probably resonate with that. We all have that place. And so this is why this is a rehearsal. I mean, if over the span of 12 weeks in different ways, using different models and different maps and different kinds of languages and even different kinds of practices, we've been rehearsing coming up to the edge, what's called the threshold moment, and even just imagining at first, letting go into it. Meditation practice becomes a daily practice. It becomes, or if you're a repeat psychedelic user, several ceremonies, same thing. It's moving that experience from the conceptual into the embodied so that we can truly let go and be ready for whatever comes. And I think underneath it is a opportunity for faith because doubt, there's so much doubt there, suspicion, um, lack of confidence. Even if it's just because we don't have the experience, we don't have the experience of dying. We don't have the experience of letting go. We don't have the experience. This may be the first time that you leave your relationship, leave your job, leave your, your responsibility, you disobey, lose your mind, fall apart. Thinking about Mary, it stuck with me almost 4 or 5 sessions ago, like free fall. I just use it as the opportunity to start to congeal all the maps into one, trying to answer these questions as broadly as I can so they're as applicable to wherever you are. But now we're at the end, and so it's good to start to stitch them together. One of the things that I wanted to talk about in today's session, because we're at the juncture of the Bardo, what happens in the mandala, what happens in the visualization with the deity, being in consort or dialogue with the deity, and then assuming the role of Tara. I call this process reverse engineering. The reverse engineering is, when they find UFOs in the 1950s crash landing in the desert in where was it? Where is that famous place? In the Roswell. Yeah, so Roswell, yeah. Um, what do? They put it in they put it in a big hangar and they reverse engineer it. They figure out, they assemble it and then reassemble it so that they know how it was built and what the parts do and all of that. It's solve a coagula from an engineering point of view, in order to replicate, so that they can replicate the technology. And that's what the tantras is. I mean, that's my best explanation. Other than the flight simulator, my best explanation is reverse engineering so that we can it's an advanced technology to transform an ordinary human being into a super extraordinary human being. And just like you need a basis, you need that UFO to reverse engineering. You do it on the basis of a lama teacher who's already had high realization. And what that does is it gives you confidence. It's not a story. It's not a mythology. That's the power of a mentor. That's the power of the guru. One of the roles of the guru is to inspire confidence that it's within reach and possibility for you, so that you could reverse engineer. You could go on your heroic journey. You could depart the ordinary world. You could undergo the disillusion. You could undergo the remanifestation or the reassembling based on energy. And then you can imagine your manifestation, and then you could return to the ordinary world. So, I mean, I think it's one of the most exquisite technology I've ever come across. And I certainly can't do it any service in 4 sessions, but some of you have already been on a 4-year program and then a 2-year program, and all of that content is now in the cloud. You can make yourself available to it. You can study with other great teachers. It's not something that Geshe Tenzin Zopa necessarily doles out, although slowly after many years of prodding and him denying access because we weren't ready, because the virtue wasn't there and the connection wasn't there. So fostering the relationship was important, and fostering the right motivation. And that's why he kept saying, do lamrim, 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 get it together. It's just like me at the boxing gym, just all the drills. You don't want to do the drills. You want to get in the ring. But if you get in the ring too early, you get your ass kicked. You get a good ass kicking. If you don't have preparation and you do psychedelics, you get a good ass kicking. So you do the Nungdro, you do the preliminaries, you do the Lamrem, you do the preparations, you serve the guru. And eventually something loosens, and suddenly some of the instructions come. One of the foundations, though, we have to keep making sure that the foundation is good. There's always the 3 principles of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, correct view of emptiness. That's the whole Lamrim is designed to instill those 3 pillars of those 3 foundations, so that upon that, your tantra will actually work. If you don't have these 3 things, then the tantra is actually not necessarily dangerous, although it could be dangerous if you're a sociopath. Could be dangerous if you're really narcissistic. Could be dangerous if you're grandiose. Could be dangerous if you start mixing it with other, I don't know, some toxic combination of psychedelics and tantra without a good firm foundation. I think could just be not a good recipe. The renunciation, the correct view, which is the bodhicitta and the correct view. The correct view is really pivotal. I tried to talk about it last week. It's worth repeating. There are different ways of talking about it, but one way of talking about it is true non-dualism. The idea with non-dualism means non-dual, not two. Each of the maps that we've been working with have a dualism. Can anyone tell me what the dualism between in the first map of the hero's journey, what the dualism is? Anybody remember? Each of the models has a dualism built into it. So for the monomyth, you have the Holy Trinity, but you also have a dualism. The dualism is between the ordinary world and the special world. In the individuation, it's between the conscious and the unconscious. And in the rebirth model, it's between relative reality and ultimate reality. It seems like two different things. I mean, the ordinary world and the special world. So the world that you and I occupy when the class is over and we go get a coffee, or we're having an issue with our kids, or I don't know, or you're struggling with depression, or you're starting a new habit and it feels impossible, or your project. You hit a roadblock in your project. These are the what are considered the ordinary world. And then you do a long meditation. I mean, we're doing an hour of practice in the Crucible on the visualization, and you know, within the hour, hopefully you have at least a dose or a glimpse of what it's like to retreat from the world and go into this alternative reality, alternative space, you know, where you're at the sum with the Ratchan Nunnery Peace Stupa already complete, and you're trying on Tara for size. Mm, the conventional world is the world of forms and appearances, and the ultimate nature of reality is its emptiness, their openness, their lack of inherent existence. The non-dualism is that they're two sides of the same coin. The problem is that our binary mind wants to give preference to one side of the coin. So we think the special world is the place we want to stay, for example. We want to stay on the mountaintop. I don't know how many of you take psychedelics, but there is this phenomenon with people now that psychedelics is growing, that because there's such mind expansion during the psychedelics, there is the desire for repeated use. And then you can talk to people, and there are some people that, you know, you get the sense that being under the influence is more important than being in the world. There's preference. Like the preference is that the ultimate thing, the ultimate nature of things is what's real. The conventional, is unreal. And therefore, if you reify that, then there's disinterest, apathy, dissociation. If you privilege one of the dichotomy, you'll have this kind of arm's length for the other. You'll have the failure to return. You'll have you'll have a sense that you could have hubris. I mean, people smoking their cigar saying, I've discovered it all, and they're leaning back while the world burns. Something completely off about that. There's a misunderstanding embodying that. The not two means that the distinctions between form and emptiness are preserved, not collapsed. In other words, yes, you can go into a space, as we do in the rehearsal of the Dark Night, where there's no past and future. Yes, that is possible, but it is considered liminal. It's not considered ultimate. It's a throughway. It's a gateway. Things can collapse. We can have samadhis and meditation experiences where things can collapse. Subject object dualism can collapse, and not just in Buddhism, but in many traditions, there are focused attention, bliss states, uh, flow states, we call them, high mountain states, high mountain vantage points is. I guess it's true that you could say that when you're at your lowest, the same is true. I've been there. I've been so depressed that I thought, oh my God, what's the point of living? And that is going to the edge and then reifying what you find there as the totality of your existence. And then what does it do? One of the symptoms is that you're demotivated to do anything. You can be demotivated at the top, or you can be demotivated at its, or what is it, the zenith and the nadir. The correct view is about a true non-dualism where the hallucination isn't collapsed. It's allowed to, it is emptiness appearing. That's the thing. It's that when you read the Heart Sutra, it says form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is none other than emptiness. Emptiness is none other than form. So this is the idea that not emptiness is not discrete and separate. It's not a separate place. It's not a separate thing. It's none other than form. And form is none other than emptiness. They're not two things. They're one thing. So, the form is emptiness is easier to understand. That just requires a little analysis. So you could look at your computer screen or your mobile phone or your Keith's hat. Everybody look at Keith's hat. Okay. Just choose something and then analyze. Analyze it. You start to dissolve it under your analysis that what is it made of? It's made of parts, and then the parts are made of parts, and the parts are made of parts, and suddenly you go from the superficial sense that it's one thing into it breaks down like the classic analogy in the text is of a chariot or a car or Empire State Building or whatever. The form is emptiness is easier. You just dissolve and dissolve and dissolve until you get to subatomic particles, and then you dissolve those, and then it opens into the vista of emptiness. But the emptiness is form. You have to remember that emptiness is not a thing. Which seems obvious with the use of language, but it's worth restating. Emptiness is not a thing. Emptiness is an absence of a thing, which then allows reality to be just as it is. Emptiness is not a thing. Emptiness is the absence of a thing you thought was there, which is impossible for it to be there. So then what's actually there? Is everything is there. When you understand emptiness and you understand that it's not a thing, it's an absence of a thing, what are you left with? You're left with all the things just as they are. You're left with the Keith's hat. You're left with the computer, you're left with the building, you're left with the car. What remains, though, is no fundamental, visceral sense that it's a thing as it appears. There's no more confusion about the thing that you're perceiving and the way that it appears. So that's why they call it correct view. They're not saying the world disappears. They're saying the world appears as it actually is. So before there was a mountain, then there was no mountain, then there was the mountain again. Ordinary perceptions views the mountain as a subject object duality. It's an inherent mountain. It's made of boulders and trees. Then there's the disillusion into emptiness where you can't find the mountain. Your analysis cuts every piece into further pieces until there is no mountain. And you're not then you the danger is that you're left there. That's where apathy can be built. That's where one of the greatest misunderstandings can happen at that milestone right there. What Nagarjuna says is be careful when you work with emptiness that you're viewing it like working with a snake. Don't grab it at the wrong end. It can destroy you. From there is no mountain, then the mountain reappears again, but now there's no more clinging and there's no more reaction to your hallucination. There is a deeper visceral understanding that things are empty as they appear. Sometimes there's a hyphen between the two words to alert us to the fact that they're one thing. It's called empty appearance, empty appearance, empty hyphen appearance. You can't find emptiness. What you can find is emptiness appearance. First, you have an appearance, then you have the lack of the appearance, then you have an empty appearance. All of this to say, because now we're talking about returning as Tara. First of all, Tara is empty appearance. First of all, your traumatic personality is empty appearance. First, let's start with that. You say your name to yourself with such and such history. You didn't get enough in childhood. There's a legacy there. You didn't get enough because some prior generation didn't get enough, or maybe it was worse than not getting enough. There was active abuse, and you start looking down the totem, the ancestral totem. And this definitely has a stream of consequentiality and consequence. So, your DNA fires in a certain way, epigenetics fire in a certain way, maybe your chemistry fires in a certain way, your outlook is shaped accordingly, your behaviors then shape accordingly, your behaviors and your emotions then start to work or act as reinforcement contingencies. So they come back to confirm deeper narratives and deeper emotions, and the thing starts to snowball through the generations. That's samsara. And, if you're on a course like this, you've probably done some therapy. And the question is can therapy work? On what basis? On what basis can we say that we can heal? On what basis can we say we can change? On what basis we can say we can improve? On what basis can we say we can evolve? On what basis can we say we can ascend? It's 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 on the basis of emptiness. And at no time is emptiness saying, well, the depression doesn't exist and the trauma doesn't exist and the legacy of ancestral imperfection doesn't exist. No, it's not saying that. It's not saying it's all in your mind. It's not saying it doesn't exist. In fact, it's saying because everything is empty, yes, it could get worse. How's that? Well, the snowball can accumulate. That's also emptiness. The snowball can accumulate in both directions. It's showing that it's empty because it's getting worse. That's also true. That's also correct use of the word emptiness. You can you can you can reinforce your chemistry, you can reinforce your emotional volatility, your dysregulation, you can reinforce your dissociation, you can reinforce your victim narrative, you can reinforce your learned helplessness because of emptiness. Emptiness means it's not fixed. Emptiness means that it lacks a absolute, but it doesn't deny its relative movement, its relative dynamic, its relative formation. That never gets denied. So the Tara, you can't appreciate rebuilding Tara if you don't appreciate already the emptiness of the ordinary person, you say your name, taking a course, committing to practice, taking on a project, putting efforts, developing virtue, developing alignment. We call that the relative or the conventional level. First, there's a mountain. Don't, look deeply, and you can't find the place inside of you that's convinced of your lack of worthwhileness. You can be convinced of it, but you can't find it. You can find multiple parts. You can find places where you've had success. Suddenly they contradict each other. So each of us looks in the mirror and we determine how we're holding a particular configuration of self-selected data and excluding other bits of data that don't align or confirm. And then we use that composite as some sort of identity formation. And it's usually less desirable. It's usually, I am the inadequate one. I am the incapable one. I am the disturbed one. I'm the dissociative one. I'm the depressed one. Then the medicine of emptiness comes in and says, yes, those data points are only relatively real. There are a lot of other data points and they're fluid. The mosaic can shift. You can have a mosaic that's combined or made or comprised of pebbles, different colored pebbles, and there was one up at Panulisan, Panchak Panulisan, the highest temple here in Bali. The floor of the temple is made of made of pebbles. Some lava stones are black and others are white, and there's an image that they created out of them. And then you could procure, you could pick out each of the colored stones and you could make a completely different image with them. That's the reverse engineering. Why is that possible? How is that possible? Because of emptiness. So Tara, for those of you that will be challenged by people, scientifically reductionistic minded people that will look at you and go, you're engaged in an active hallucination by imagining that you're a deity. There's some part of it that's true, actually. It is kind of crazy I mean, I often joke if people like peered into the crucible or whatever, and I actually asked you what you were doing, and then you tried to explain it to them. But then you should be able to explain it to them. You should be able to explain it to them coherently. It has a science to it, its own science to it. You say, well, yeah, the building of Tara is built with the same fabric that the ordinary is built with, except it's a more elastic. It's built on the assumption of soul plasticity rather than calcification. It's because so the traumatic narrative that I've been holding on to that becomes concretized. We're putting a little solution, dissolution, solve et coagula into it, putting a little medicine in it, loosening it. And then the actual building blocks are being reconfigured into something more pristine, something more divine. But as we build it, we recognize it's being built out of emptiness. So that's one of the hallmarks of Tantra. You at no time when you're rebuilding Tara do you rebuild it with the same sensibility that you had when you mistook your ordinary self for reality, hard reality. You're now building it on non-duality, which recognizes that the thing that you're building is fluid. It just feels better and it has more purpose to it. And it's designed, it's a better tool for the job of your project. And it's cultivated powerful energy. It's purified energy that usually went into aggression and depression and self-sabotage and alienation. All of that is wasted energy, is destructive energy. This is constructive energy. How does it get there? It's purified. Purified of what? It's purified of hallucinations. It's purified of feeling always under threat. And that's what we're rehearsing when we go through the stages of dissolution, all the lights, when it goes from moonlight to twilight to dark night and to clear light. That's what we're rehearsing and just simultaneously the drops are descending on their own pilgrimage. What is that a rehearsal of? It's a rehearsal of the purification of the energy that underlies ordinary appearances. It's actually constructive energy, not destructive energy. So yes, you can say it's a little bit of a fantasy. On the other hand, you can turn around and say, is your traumatic story? So the people that point fingers at you and go, what's all this about a green lady with a crown? What kind of crazy person are you? There's no such thing, they say to you. And then you say something like, well, the person that you think you are depressed and angry, is that better? Is that more real? And what's that contributing? So neither are any more real. They're made of the same thing. And I don't know about you, but I'd much prefer to have a little more dose of Geshe Tenzin Zopa's joy. That's just me personally. I speak for myself. I'd like to have if I could die with just because I'm a bit of a curmudgeony dark guy. I'm a little bit of a stick in the mud. If I could die with just a little more joy, that actually translates even in my own sphere of influence to being a better dad, let's say, to the kids, then it would be a life made worthwhile. So I just want to talk about this non-dualism as a foundation for your reconstruction of yourself as more confident and as more capable and as worthy. I mean, this thing of divine pride is that you anoint yourself at that initiatory moment by vowing and affirming your worthwhileness. And then you imagine yourself taking that competency into the world and actually having a tangible impact. And while you're doing this, it's not like you misunderstand yourself as Tara inherently. You see it as a dream play, but it's just a more effective dream play. I guess that's the real point that I want to get across, because that's that taking that non-dualism from start to finish and ending there also allows you to change the stage of the theater, like a scene change, and go into the ordinary. You're not going from a discrete sacred world into a ordinary world. There's continuity there. You're importing your non-dualism at the beginning during the disillusion. You're reverse engineering on the basis of emptiness, becoming the deity, trying to channel Geshe Tenzin Zopa's or the Dalai Lama's energy, infectious buoyancy and enthusiasm and joy and perseverance, whatever their good qualities are. You're trying to reorganize the orientation of your centrifugal force of your self formation around that energy. But this time, instead of it being a salt pillar, it's more like a fluid dance, apparition, a mirage, knowing that. But still, the mirage can have an impact. Still, the mirage can have an impact, of course. How do we know that? Well, our parents that weren't so skillful with us, are their nature is more like mirage. Did it have an impact on us? Yes. And if they were good and we become good enough, will we have an impact as a mirage? Yes. Non-dualism. And you take it all the way through that the special world itself dissolves, the mandala dissolves, the vision of Ratchan nunnery dissolves, the queen of diamond intuition, green Tara, dissolves, and you so-called go back into ordinary appearance. But because form is emptiness and emptiness is form, and form is none other than emptiness and emptiness is none other than form, the ordinary world reappears, but in a way it never left. It was always there. And so it's like, this is why lucid dreaming is one of the great tantric methodologies, because it's like awakening in a dream. And then if you've ever had a lucid moment in a dream, you become superhuman. You can actually choose how to use the dream to your advantage. You can make choices in the dream and you can manifest things. You become like a magician. And that's the point. What's the point? The point is to bring the best energy and the right foot forward, that Tara's right foot forward, into your project. Infuse it with the best energy and cast it out into the world. And at no time freeze around it or consolidate it, especially around the results, and especially around the results if they're not forthcoming or quickly coming. Very key. There's this idea in pop culture, new age culture, that you can manifest things. This word manifest happens all the time. I'm sure you're well aware of it. It's the manifest. And you get your thinking. If you get your, what's it called? The book is called The Secret. And then there's all this new age mumbo, and then lots and lots of money to be made in the courses around manifestation. But if you look carefully at it, the manifestation is, if you just think, they're usually, what are you manifesting? It's like self-indulgent, self-gratifying, you know, aggrandizing. So what you have there is a bunch of mumbo jumbo that has no three principal paths underneath it. No refuge, no bodhicitta, no correct view. It's not true that just because you put something out in the world, instantly it manifests. I mean, some of us, I'm growing to the appreciation that some of the things that we're working on may take decades to come to full fruition. And you think to yourself, well, I don't have decades to wait. Don't have it. I don't have it. But then just think, in the grand scheme of things, you never disappear. You don't go off the abyss and the electric activity in your heart and brain disappear, end, and that's it. The game is over. You're building a foundation primarily for you to be the inheritor of the world that you receive. And then you can say, I'm also doing that for future generations and other living beings. You can't escape. Samsara is nirvana, just like form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. Around and around we go. We can go around and around banging our head in the labyrinth thinking that poor me and victim me and how could this happen to me? Or we can go and around and still bang our head. How about that? It's not like the pearly gates open immediately for us because we're manifestors and just paid our course money. No, samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. You still bang your head and you say, this is what my soul has put in front of me so that I can expand. And the minute I say that to myself, Emily's like probably listening to this going, yeah, you fucking fraud. Because I'm the one pissing in my boots and crying when I get my head banging against the wall. But the teaching is still there, whether we can adopt it, whether we can implement it, the teaching is still there. Nirvana is samsara, samsara is nirvana. Matthew hits a roadblock with his film. He may have some narrative in his stream that is his default fallback. Boom. Because of training, maybe he puts a few seeds in the ground and then you don't know when they ripen, but then they ripen and they go, well, this is what I need to grow. This is helping me grow. The other day, we got word that the book that I shared with you, Return with Elixir, is going to be another year. Motherfucker. I started that in 2019. Would like for it to be done. They tell me if you want 450 pages, we have to outsource it to another printing press in Asia. It's going to take another year. Uh, okay. Okay. There's like a moment of a little sting with it. And then there's like, okay, then I'm thinking, then what happened is I go, it's now 2025. It's almost a 6-year project. And then I think of Geshe Tenzin Zopa, and I think of Ratch and Nunnery, and I think of the World Peace Stupa. And I think, okay, somehow that book may be delayed because it's going to be tied to a bigger project. If I really turn it over to the soul, there may be explanations that I don't readily come to me when I'm in my contracted and confined and rigid and limited space. Have you ever had that experience where you catch yourself in the corner and then you allow yourself the possibility that there may be some explanation beyond your comprehension? Have you ever had that? How freeing is that? And then how many times is it true in retrospect, post-mortem, you go back and you revisit it and actually it was really good for you? It didn't feel good in the moment. The instinct kicked up and said, this is, poor me, or this is terrible. And then only a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, you look back and you go, as Damien Eccles did after 20 years on death row, and he says, I'd have it no other way. There's another emptiness. There's another little harbinger of emptiness right there in there. So maybe the book's delay is actually an opening. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. What if it took another year after that? I mean, some people, I think Brian Marescu's Immortality Key took him 10 years because he kept turning him over to the excavation, and just when he thought he would be done, something took him further into the labyrinth and further into the labyrinth and further into the labyrinth. And what he comes out with is probably one of the best books of a whole generation. Certainly timely given the psychedelic renaissance. What is it talking about? It's talking about how we are immortal and how the ancients knew it. And it's emerging at a time where scientific reductionism is at its absolute end. We're almost at extinction state. And then boom, there's this book about prior civilizations recognizing how we were immortal. And now you've got a seed for future generations to remember. That's incredible offering. Incredible. See, that's a project. That's a multi-life, multi-generational, cultural project. of renewing and restoring our understanding about who we are, why we're here, what our purpose is. And what did it require a human being to do? Go on an odyssey, a 10-year odyssey, just like the Iliad. Okay, we have one more session left. We had one good question. If there are others, bring them to next session. Think about your project. The point of today's session, we mostly captured in our experience doing the disillusion and then coming out of the disillusion to taking on the dream body of Tara, finding the right energy, using data storage and memory. This is this is reverse parts work. So the alienated parts also have divine parts in there. We're just self-selecting to choose the divine parts to graft and grow a new self. But this time we're grafting and growing a new self, recognizing that their foundation is on the ephemeral, open nature of reality. Therefore, the instinct to grasp and calcify has been mitigated. And that allows you then to dissolve it back down again and then come back into your ordinary world as an avatar. Now you're an avatar. Now you have a mission. Now the little emerald of green Tara at your heart mandala, unbeknownst to anyone, is still active, emitting the signal as you do your project. Speaking of project, part of my wish in this course for those that needed the structure is that you fulfill a project. You can actually write an essay, write a poem, shoot a piece of film, create a mini doc, whatever. You may have a tangible project. You may want to implement it, and you may want some feedback, or you may want to use it as part of this course. So we're getting up to class 12. 1 month from class 12, if you have a project that you want to submit for the certificate, you have to complete all the quizzes, do all the classes, and do a project. This is not for me. This is for you if you want that structure. If you're actually working on something, you want to share it, you want feedback on it, you want to put it out on the world, you want accountability around it, that option is there. So 1 month after we all meet, after the Crucible ends, you can turn that project in, whatever it is. It's really an opportunity to congeal what you learned and what you got out of the course. Okay. Again, it's not being graded. It's not for me. It's just a opportunity for you. So there's one class left. If you're not doing the project, don't worry about it. But if you have final questions, then bring some good questions in for our last class. And right after class, I'm leaving for the SUM. Like literally that day, next week, Wednesday, I leave for the SUM. I'm going to try to gather up some inspiration about how we can maybe intersect with the Stupa building project, because I think it's emerged, it's there. For those that feel compelled or feel interested, I probably on the tail end, probably around that month marker, I'll try to gather us all together. This is my hope. Hopefully it will work out this way. At some point after the course ends, we'll have a regathering where I can share some things that I've learned about the stupa and maybe some ways that we can work together to help it come into fruition. If that's not your project and you have another one, just go with your gut and keep going, keep moving. If you've got a film that you're doing, if you've got some beautiful souls here working on new theories and new, collabs, just keep building. Just keep, especially if you keep bumping your head and the timeline goes and you get, so-called quote unquote bad news or delays or, not the result that you're looking for. Just keep thinking that's the soul. The soul is at work. Synchronicity is at work. You're being pulled. You're going through trial. You're going through purification. Something inside of you is ascending. Something inside of you is being shaken loose. Something inside of you is being called forth. Something inside of you is being emboldened. Something inside of you is being asked to be called out and shared. Hopefully by now we share that narrative based on all the work that we've done. Okay, we can just end just metabolizing a little. Maybe there is a prayer inside of you that wants to come out. So let's give it a couple of minutes. Just breathe with me for a minute. If you really listen to your soul, what is it telling you right now? Okay, thank you so much, guys.